Here's something that should make you genuinely angry. There is a white powder sitting on the shelf at your hardware store right now. It has been killing every insect on Earth for longer than humans have existed. It costs for dollars. It works on over 100 pest species. Insects cannot develop resistance to it, ever, because of the specific way it kills them. It's registered by the EPA. Organic farmers put it directly on food crops. You can literally eat it. The pest control industry in the United States generates $16 billion a year. And I can prove they've known about this powder the entire time. Stay with me, because in the next 15 minutes you're going to understand exactly why the exterminator who quoted you $800 last month never mentioned a $4 alternative that outperforms everything in his truck. And before this video ends, I'm going to show you the document that proves the pest control industry has had this research since 1960. But first, you need to understand what this powder actually is. Because once you see how it works, nothing about the $16 billion industry will make sense anymore. My neighbor Maria signed a pest control contract 3 years ago. $1,400 for the first year, quarterly visits, professional-grade chemicals. The full-service package from one of the big national companies whose trucks you've seen in every neighborhood in America. By month 4 the ants were back. By month 7 she had a roach problem in a kitchen that had never had one before. By month 12 the salesperson explained that pest control is an ongoing maintenance process and that without continued treatment the infestation would return worse than before. She renewed. She's still paying today, 3 years, over $4,000 for a problem that has never actually been solved. And here's what makes that number impossible to sit with. Maria is not a rare case. Maria is the entire business model, replicated across millions of households every single quarter. But before I show you the powder that ends all of it, I need you to understand why it works. Because the mechanism is the reason no insect can ever defeat it. And once you see it, you'll understand why the chemical industry has spent decades hoping you never ask the right questions. Stay with me. This is where it gets interesting. Go back 30 million years. Picture the bottom of an ancient lake. Still water, darkness, and floating down through that darkness like microscopic snow, the shells of dead organisms called diatoms. Diatoms are single-celled algae that have existed for over 200 million years, one of the oldest life forms this planet has ever produced. What makes them extraordinary isn't their biology, it's their architecture. Each diatom builds itself a shell out of silica, natural glass, structured like a microscopic piece of lace. And when the diatom dies, that glass shell sinks. For 30 million years, they sank, layer after layer, compressing into soft, white sedimentary rock hundreds of feet thick across multiple continents. We mine that rock, we grind it into powder. And what you get looks and feels exactly like chalk. Soft, harmless, you could rub it between your fingers all day and feel nothing but slight dryness. Now here's where it gets crazy. At the scale of an insect, that same powder is not chalk, it is a field of broken glass. Every particle a jagged fossilized fragment, with edges sharp enough to slice through the waxy protective coating on an insect's exoskeleton. The layer that every land insect on Earth depends on to stay alive. Insects don't get poisoned by this powder. They don't get paralyzed. They don't suffer a neurological event. They dehydrate, no poison, no chemicals, just physics. The microscopic glass fragments cut through the waxy cuticle, and the insect begins losing moisture at a rate its biology cannot compensate for. It dies from a process as basic and irreversible as a punctured water tank slowly draining. That powder is diatomaceous earth. And here is the single sentence that should permanently change how you think about the entire pest control industry. Because the killing mechanism is purely physical, there is no biological pathway through which any insect can ever develop resistance to it. Read that again. No resistance, ever, not in 10 years. Not in 100, not ever. Chemical pesticides target specific biological processes. Nerve function, reproduction, cellular respiration. Insects evolve around those processes across generations. That's why treatments that worked 10 years ago are quietly failing today. Bed bug strains resistant to pyrethroids. Cockroach populations with cross-resistance to multiple chemical classes. The chemicals are losing, the insects are winning. Diatomaceous earth cuts through physical structure. You cannot evolve around a razor blade. It has been working the same way for 30 million years, and it will work the same way 30 million years from now. This is why researchers studying chemical-resistant bed bug strains, the exact strains defeating everything your exterminator is currently spraying, are turning back to diatomaceous earth as the only reliably effective treatment remaining. And in a moment, I'm going to show you the document that proves the pest control industry has had this exact research since 1960 while continuing to sell you something that works less every single year. But first, here's what happened when I tested it myself. Now here's the part you've probably never been told. The EPA first registered pesticide product containing diatomaceous earth in 1960. The federal regulatory body that decides what is allowed to be called a pesticide in this country said yes, 60 years ago. Oregon State University's National Pesticide Information Center reviewed the full toxicology studies and found no reproductive, developmental, or carcinogenic effects in animal studies, even at high doses. A 2015 study demonstrated significant reduction in Argentine ant activity following the application. Multiple peer-reviewed entomology journals confirmed effectiveness against bed bugs, specifically the chemical-resistant strains currently making your exterminators spray progressively useless. The USDA documented its use in direct food crop application for grain storage protection. Here's the twist. I tested it myself across 3 active pest problems. A recurring ant trail through the kitchen that had survived to professional chemical treatments over 2 years. A flea problem in the living room carpet. A chemical spray killed the initial population, but they returned within 6 weeks. And grain weevils in a bag of rice in my pantry. I applied food grade did to all 3. The ant trail was gone within 4 days. 7 months ago, they haven't come back. The flea problem, applied to the carpet and room perimeter, left 72 hours, vacuumed. No fleas after that single treatment. 8 months later, nothing. The pantry weevils treated the shelves, mixed it into new grain storage. Zero activity since total product cost across all 3 treatments, $6. Let that land $6, 3 problems, permanently solved. Now remember that document I mentioned, here's what it actually means. The pest control industry generates more annual revenue than the entire global music streaming industry. More than the US amusement park industry, and it is built on a subscription model that structurally requires impermanent solutions to survive. Here's what that means for you specifically. Applied correctly in a dry indoor environment, diatomaceous earth doesn't evaporate, it doesn't degrade. It doesn't lose effectiveness, it sits and waits. Every insect that walks through it receives a death sentence that executes within 24 to 72 hours. Weeks later, months later, in a sealed wall cavity, potentially years later. That is a permanently solved problem. A permanently solved problem is not a business model for a company charging you for quarterly visits. Think about what you've actually been buying. The average American homeowner spends between $300 and $550 per year on pest control. Annual contracts from major providers run between $400 and $1,200. $400 a year over 10 years of homeownership, that's $4,000. A 50-pound bag of food-grade diatomaceous earth, enough to treat your entire property multiple times, costs $20 to $30. The chemical treadmill is not a side effect of the pest control industry. It is the product. You get treated, pests return. You get treated again. The impermanence of the solution is the revenue engine. The failure is the feature. Now watch this. I reviewed the publicly available training materials from major pest control franchise operators. The customer retention language consistently frames pest control as an ongoing maintenance relationship. Never a solvable problem, never a condition that ends. Because if you understood it as a solvable problem, you would ask why it hasn't been solved. And that is the one question the entire industry cannot afford. So I searched Orkin's website, Terminix, Rent-A-Kill, their facts, blog posts, and treatment guides, specifically looking for any mention of diatomaceous earth. Orkin mentions it once, one paragraph buried in an article about organic pest control, ending with, "Professional treatment is advised for serious infestations." Professional treatment for a problem a $4 bag solves permanently. That is not an oversight. That is a decision made by people who understand exactly what diatomaceous earth does to their revenue model. Here's what I held back until now, and this is the part that genuinely stopped me. There is a resistance crisis inside commercial pest control that the industry is not disclosing to customers. A 2020 review published in the Journal of Medical Entomology documented that bed bug populations from urban environments showed resistance to pyrethroid insecticides, the chemical class used in the majority of commercial treatments, in over 90% of samples in some regions. Over 90%. Let that number hit you. The primary chemical tool being sold to you right now has approximately a 10% chance of working against the pest it's most commonly called to treat. The same review confirmed that diatomaceous earth maintained full effectiveness against every single resistant strain tested. Everyone, no exceptions. The industry's response has not been transparency. It has been new chemical combinations, increased treatment frequency, and higher prices. The crisis created by chemical dependence has been monetized rather than solved. Your problem became their opportunity. Meanwhile, a 60-year-old $4 powder with zero resistance pathway sits at your hardware store, maintaining a 100% effectiveness rate against every strain that has defeated the chemicals being sold to you this quarter. This is not slow. This is not unreliable. This is permanent, and they know it. Here is exactly how to use it, including the one mistake that makes it completely useless, which you've almost certainly made if you've tried this before. Food grade only. There is an industrial grade form used in swimming pool filtration that has been heat treated and chemically modified. Pool grade contains crystalline silica that is harmful with repeated inhalation and will not work for pest control. Food grade is amorphous silica, sharp edges fully intact. Look for the words food grade on the label. Harris and Safer brand are widely available. A 4-pound bag runs for $8. A 50-pound bag costs $20 to $30. Now the mistake. Here's where almost everyone goes wrong the first time, including me. I piled the thick along the baseboards like caulking a bathtub, and the ants walked around every pile like it was a wall they could see. I watched it happen. Insects detect and avoid obvious powder piles. What kills them is a thin, barely visible dusting, fine enough that they walk through without detecting it, heavy enough that particles adhere to their exoskeleton. Invisible coverage, not visible barriers. A $5 powder duster gets into cracks, behind appliances, and inside wall voids that hand application can never reach. Indoors, along all baseboards, under the refrigerator and stove, inside cabinet hinges, around pipe penetrations under the sink, inside the refrigerator motor compartment where roaches harbor for warmth, along bathroom baseboards, under the vanity, around the toilet base. For fleas or bed bugs, under the mattress, inside bed frame joints, along bedroom baseboards, under every piece of furniture. Leave it undisturbed. It keeps working until you remove it. And here's the application most people have never heard of. Food grade to mix directly into stored grain at 1 cup per 50 pounds. It coats each kernel and kills any weevil or beetle larvae with zero chemical contamination. Farmers have used this for decades. You've probably never been told because nobody selling grain storage solutions profits from you knowing it. Outdoors, around your entire perimeter foundation, garden beds, fence lines, animal enclosures. Reapply after rain. Wet loses effectiveness completely. Indoors in dry conditions, it works indefinitely without attention. One honest limitation: it does not kill eggs. For rapid reproduction cycles, leave it in place through multiple life cycles. Emerging adults walk through treated surfaces and die before reproducing. The population collapses across 2 to 3 generations. It takes longer than a chemical bomb, but it actually works every time, without resetting the cycle that sends you another invoice in 90 days. Here's the number I keep coming back to: 60 years. Diatomaceous earth has been EPA registered for 60 years. Your grandparents could have used this. Your parents could have used this. Every homeowner who ever signed a pest control contract had access to this information the entire time. And the $16 billion industry that grew alongside those 60 years had every financial reason to make sure you never found it. This doesn't require a conspiracy, no shadowy boardroom meetings. It only requires that an industry dependent on repeat customers never hands those customers the information that ends the repeat visits. That's not villainy, that's the cold logic of a business that needs you to keep calling. Maria canceled her contract 3 months ago. Spent $12 on to, hasn't seen an ant or a roach since. When I showed her everything I've just shown you, she didn't say she was angry. She said she felt stupid for not knowing sooner. You weren't stupid, you weren't careless. You were a customer in a system specifically designed to keep you from asking the question that ends it. You weren't stupid, you weren't told. And there is a profound difference between those two things. If this gave you something real today, send it to one person who's been on that quarterly chemical subscription. Not a like, not a comment, actually send it. They've been paying for a problem that has a $4 solution, and nobody profiting from their ignorance was ever going to tell them. This channel exists to find exactly these things. Solutions that work, that have always worked, that got buried under the business model of something more expensive. Subscribe if that matters to you. I'll see you in the next one. The information was always there. The only thing missing was someone willing to say it out loud. Now you've heard it and you can't unknow it.